shot of what this thing looks like. Not too impressive for the time being, but that is it. As I mentioned, it's the size of a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, and the way we're able to observe this couple ways. We use these radio telescopes. This one happens to be in Puerto Rico. Kind of interesting to see. This one you have over here, the Goldstone, is actually from the Mojave Desert of California. This thing is so incredibly effective. It can actually get an object, take a peek at an object some 10 billion miles away from planet Earth. So pretty amazing stuff. Let me show you this animation that we have from NASA. And as we pop this up, you're going to get an idea. You'll see, of course, the Earth, which is right in the middle. Then you see that line that darts right through the screen. That is the path it's going to take. It is not expected to make contact with planet Earth, but I'll tell you, if it were to, strike, the ocean, the Pacific, the Atlantic, it could make an impact that would cause a 7.0 earthquake, or possibly at the same time create a tsunami that would be up to 70 feet in height and spread out about some 60 miles from its impact zone. So pretty interesting. Good thing is, again, not expected to hit planet Earth, but it's going to make another pass a little bit closer in the year 2092. I think we're going to be okay. Maybe your grandkids might have some issues, though.
Okay.
Maybe great-grandkids.
Thanks, Reynolds.
You bet.
Wow, you're thinking way far ahead.
Long term.
Happy Hour on this Friday, and joining me tonight is our chief producer Jenny Churchill and Evan McMorris-Santoro, reporter and blogger for Talking Points Memo.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me, guys. Happy Friday. You know, we've spoken a few end of the world theories on the show before, especially when everyone thought that the rapture was coming, but the theories never died down, and especially because we haven't gotten to 2012 yet. And so now here's a new one that apparently people are just going crazy over online. Take a look.
Okay, look at the Earth distance, 1.812. Helios right now getting nearer to us by 300,000 miles per day. In about a week, that number is going to be 400,000 miles per day, and it's going to continue to increase. You're going to see more and more volcanoes going off. That's your sign to wake people up. You have 33 volcanoes erupting right now in the Earth, and that number is going to continue to go up as we move along in the timeline.
Vote on the news, and here's the winner. There's a huge hidden heavenly body right here in our solar system. Evidence is mounting that either a brown dwarf star or a gas giant planet is lurking at the outermost reaches of our solar system, far beyond the planet Pluto. According to the British newspaper The Independent, the object is 4 times the size of Jupiter. Experts say the presence of such a massive object could explain why a barrage of comets has been coming from that direction.
It's been almost 10 years since little Pluto was demoted from being a planet, but today scientists from the California Institute of Technology have announced that they finally have solid evidence for a planet X, a true 9th planet on the edge of our solar system.
It is believed to be far beyond the orbit of Pluto, roughly the size of Neptune, with a mass 10 times that of Earth.
There are things out there, little icy objects that are orbiting in a funny way, and nobody was quite sure why. It seemed like there might be something with gravity pulling on them, but nobody quite understood. And finally, these scientists that you talked about took a really hard look at it, did simulations, calculations, and they came up with the explanation. It probably is this giant planet.
I think I read somewhere it orbits the sun every 10,000 to 20,000 years.
Right.
Is that why no one has seen it to this point?
No, that's not why. It's because it's so dim. It's so far away that even though it's big, it's very, very dim, and it's very tough to spot with the telescope.
I'm also fascinated at the idea that this planet could be so far out there and still our sun be the mass that is keeping it in the gravitational pull of our solar system.
Right, yeah, but no, it's true.
That's incredible. And so there was a thought at one point from scientists that when they thought that there was something beyond Pluto, that it might have been all the massive objects floating in the Kuiper Belt, but it's not.
Right. So all those objects are out there, and they have a lot of mass. And originally, the scientists said, "Look, a planet is such a crazy idea. Maybe it's the Kuiper Belt itself that's pulling it on itself and making these orbits look funny."
And when we talk about the mass of this planet X, this ninth planet, being 10 times that of Earth, for those who are not scientists, what does that really mean? The mass of a planet versus Earth's mass?
Well, if you could put it on a scale, how much it would weigh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. And so it's bigger, it's bulkier, it's got more heft, it's got more gravity. It's this huge elephant in the living room, except we didn't know it was there.
You mentioned that scientists haven't seen it yet because of how far away it is and how dim it is. Is there a way for them to get visual evidence?
Yes, so the biggest telescopes in the world can theoretically see this thing if they're looking in exactly the right place. And with the publication of this new paper today, they are now going to start to look in earnest.
How much further out there is this planet X than the rest of the planets in the solar system? I mean,
so Pluto we think of as the really out at the very edge, the very farthest thing that you could call a planet, even though we don't anymore. And
I'm still supporting Pluto's right to be a planet.
But this thing is 5 times further out than Pluto.
Fascinating. Is there any chance it's not a planet?
No, there's always, it's very foolish to say no chance because, you just don't know what you don't know. But the odds are looking very, very good.
60 billion miles from the sun.
Yep.
Amazing stuff. Michael Lemonick, thank you so much. Fascinating stuff.
Great, thanks.
Pluto, the sometimes planet, may be hiding a pretty huge secret. Well, 2 huge secrets, actually. Astronomers in Spain believe that hiding behind Pluto, obscured from our view, are 2 additional giant planets. Spanish scientists in Madrid discovered the potential for the 2 massive celestial bodies at the outer reaches of our solar system after studying strange patterns in the orbit of rocky objects around Pluto, including the newly discovered dwarf planet 2012 VP113. Scientists believe the first hidden world would be about 10 times the mass of Earth. They believe that this planet is moving in resonance with a bigger planet that is somewhere between Mars and Jupiter in size and would orbit 2.
The AMS classifies meteor observations based on the number of reports per incident, where a mid-sized class event has 6 to 20 reports, a significant event has 21 to 50 reports, a large event has 51 to 100 reports, and a huge event has over 100 reports. So let's begin with a look at the mid-sized events. Here we see a pronounced jump from 2010 to 2011. Part of that jump can be attributed to the implementation of new reporting procedures by the AMS. Now let's add the number of significant reports with 21 to 50 observations each. Here we see a clear growth trend. Interestingly enough, there were no significant large events in 2010, but there were significant large events in 2011 and 2012, as well as a marked increase in 2013. In terms of huge events with over 100 reports, 2010 was barely noticeable. However, that picture is seen from the Turrialba volcano. In this frame, you see bluebonnet above the Turrialba volcano and specification data for the volcan feed. Turrialba is 10 degrees north of the equator at approximately 11,000 feet. and the Vulcan camera was pointed to the southwest with a good view of the Pacific Ocean on a clear day. In that video, we explain the difference between the horizon as we see it here on Earth and represented by the red line. The green line you see cutting through the center of the Sun is the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the plane of our solar system, and all of the planets orbit the Sun within a few degrees of it. This is important to know when analyzing a newly revealed and disturbing prediction by Nostradamus. In October 2007, the History Channel aired The Lost Book of Nostradamus for the first time. In this video, 7 prophetic images paint a catastrophic end to life as we know it. According to this program, Nostradamus is showing us the constellation of Fucus because it will play a pivotal role in the flyby. This was interesting because the Vulcan feed image data also shows Bluebonnet transiting through or very near to the constellations Ophiuchus and Sagittarius in Antarctica. The stated mission for the SPT really doesn't make a lot of sense because the same science could be done somewhere else at a fraction of the cost. So why build an expensive and sophisticated infrared telescope in such an inhospitable and inaccessible location as the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station in Antarctica? The answer is simple. This infrared 10-meter dish is the perfect instrument for observing an object rising up through the southern skies in infrared. And once they turned it on in January 2007, that's exactly what happened. A year after the SPT went online, the first of 3 highly credible disclosure videos were published on YouTube. The first, posted by Nibiru Shock 2012, was titled Nibiru Planet X Photos Taken January 2008. It was the first time the public had an opportunity to see an image of Planet X in deep space. And here you see a capture from the video, and the same capture again, but enhanced. In it, we see not just one object, but several. This is when we first learned that Planet X is actually a mini constellation of planets and moons orbiting a location of Planet X. Following that interview, Harrington commissioned the construction of a special telescope for a Planet X photographic sky survey in 1991, which was completed at the Black Birch Observatory in New Zealand. The New Zealand observations were performed using Harrington's calculations, and the results were sent to NASA. However, those films vanished and have never been seen again, which leaves us with a big question. Did Harrington actually find Planet X, Neptune's perturber? In 1992, Sitchin produced a documentary titled Are We Alone in the Universe? At the end of that film, Sitchin quotes a NASA press release from that same year. Unexplained deviations in the orbits of Uranus and Neptune point to a large outer body system of 4 to 8 Earth masses on a highly tilted orbit 7 billion miles from the Sun. This NASA press release suggests that Harrington did find Planet X in 1991. But the truth will never be known, because before he could publish his findings, Harrington died from a rapid onset of esophageal cancer on January 20. The stated mission for the SPT really doesn't make a lot of sense because the same science could be done somewhere else at a fraction of the cost. So why build an expensive and sophisticated infrared telescope in such an inhospitable and inaccessible location as the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station in Antarctica? The answer is simple. This infrared 10-meter dish is the perfect instrument for observing an object rising up through the southern skies in infrared. And once they turned it on in January 2007, that's exactly what happened. A year after the SPT went online, the first of 3 highly credible disclosure videos were published on YouTube. The first, posted by Nibiru Shock 2012, was titled Nibiru Planet X Photos Taken January 2008. It was the first time the public had an opportunity to see an image of Planet X in deep space. And here you see a capture from the video, and the same capture again, but enhanced. In it, we see not just one object, but several. This is when we first learned that Planet X is actually a mini constellation of planets and moons, orbiting a small brown dwarf star, an Urbain Le Verrier and British mathematician John Couch Adams, using Bouvard's observations. Verrier gets the official credit because he relayed those coordinates to astronomer John Gall of the Berlin Observatory, and 5 days later, Neptune was observed by Gall on September 23, 1846. This made Neptune the first planet to be discovered by a mathematical prediction. So Neptune was also the first Planet X to be discovered. But subsequent calculations based on the orbits of Uranus and Neptune indicated the presence of yet another Planet X, well beyond the orbit of Neptune, and so the search resumed. Not in Europe, but in America. The Lowell Observatory was established in 1894 in Flagstaff, Arizona, by Percival Lawrence Lowell, an independent businessman, mathematician, and astronomer. One reason Lowell founded the observatory was to study the planets you have on hand is nothing more than a buffer. It buys you some time to work something else out. To optimize that opportunity of time, gather knowledge now, because after things run out, knowledge will help you to endure. And now, I'd like to share some of this very knowledge with you. It's something I've put a lot of work and love into because I know it will help people to make it to the backside. And that is what I'm all about. For those in preparation and planning, healthcare is always a problematic area because it is focused on the pills, potions, and supplements preppers set aside to help get themselves through a cataclysm. And it is problematic because all things physical play out. So a practical solution is what we call transition planning. So is this a December 21, 2012 solution? No. In our last video, Planet X System Observations and Orbital Path Analysis, we addressed December 21, 2012 as an awareness event. It was media-driven and it was successful in creating awareness, so on that regard, mission accomplished. Now, transition is the mission, caused by large objects flying through the core of our solar system. Despite ruthless suppression, Velikovsky's work reawakened an open discussion of Planet X, and following that, a steady trickle of interest emerged, both in mainstream science and the media. On March 3, 1972, NASA launched the Pioneer 10 spacecraft to explore the outer planets. However, according to government whistleblowers, the real purpose was to find Planet X, or at least to help narrow down the search field. An interesting aspect of Pioneer 10 is that it also carried a small gold anodized aluminum plaque designed by astronomer Carl Sagan, should the spacecraft be found by extraterrestrials. At present, communication with the Pioneer 10 spacecraft is no longer possible in 18th century Europe. On March 13, 1781, William Herschel discovered Uranus, making it the first planet to be discovered with a telescope. Following his discovery, European astronomers turned their attention on Uranus and observed perturbations in its orbit. This discovery would eventually launch the search for Planet X. If one were to choose the father of Planet X research, it would have to be Alexis Bouvard, a French astronomer who observed the perturbations in the orbit of Uranus and attributed them to the existence of an unknown planet, the first, Planet X. Unfortunately, Bouvard died before the coordinates for Neptune could be mathematically determined by French mathematician Urbain Le Verrier and British mathematician John Couch Adams, using Bouvard's observations. Verrier gets the official credit because he relayed those coordinates to astronomer John Gall of the Berlin Observatory, and 5 days later, Neptune was observed by Gall on September 23, 1846. This made Neptune the first planet to be discovered by a mathematical prediction. So Neptune was also the first Planet X to be discovered. But subsequent calculations based on the orbits of Uranus and Neptune indicated the presence of yet another Planet X well beyond the orbit of Neptune, and so the search resumed. Not in Europe, but in America. The Lowell Observatory was established in 1894 in Flagstaff, Arizona, by Percival Lawrence Lowell, an independent businessman, mathematician, and astronomer. One reason Lowell founded the observatory was to study the planet Mars and its canals. The other was the search for other objects of interest in our solar system, most particularly Neptune's perturber, Planet X. A fact that revisionist historians downplay or paint over. Yet it was Lowell's intention to find the mysterious Planet X that led to the discovery of Pluto. In 1929, 14 years after Lowell's death, a young astronomer by the name of Clyde W. Tombaugh was retained by the Lowell Observatory to carry on the search for Planet X. And on February 18, 1930, he discovered Pluto. At the time, astronomers believed he had found Planet X, Neptune's perturber. Consequently, the topic of Planet X languished for some time after Tombaugh's discovery. However, after the discovery of Pluto's moon Charon in 1978, it was determined that Pluto lacked the mass to be Neptune's perturber, as it is only about 60% the size of our own moon. So with that, the search for Planet X was once again afoot. It's also interesting to note that Pluto was later demoted to the status of a dwarf planet in 2006 by the International Astronomical Union. In 1950, Immanuel Velikovsky published Worlds in Collision, and he was viciously attacked by mainstream science, even though he corresponded frequently with Albert Einstein. What generated this medieval response from modern science is that Velikovsky used ancient accounts to question the Darwinian notion of evolution with evidence of periodic cataclysms caused by large objects flying through the core of our solar system. Despite ruthless suppression, Velikovsky's work reawakened an open discussion of Planet X, and following that, a steady trickle of interest emerged, both in mainstream science and the media. On March 3, 1972, NASA launched the Pioneer 10 spacecraft to explore the outer planets. However, according to government whistleblowers, the real purpose was to find Planet X, or at least to help narrow down the search field. An interesting aspect of Pioneer 10 is that it also carried a small gold anodized aluminum plaque designed by astronomer Carl Sagan, should the spacecraft be found by extraterrestrials. At present, communication with the Pioneer 10 spacecraft is no longer possible. Following the launch of Pioneer 10, the topic of Planet X would have languished again had it not been for Zecharia Sitchin, the author of The 12th Planet, which was first published in 1976. According to his translations of ancient Sumerian texts, a race of beings living on a planet called Nibiru bioengineered early hominids on Earth to turn them into slaves for the purpose of mining gold. Called the Anunnaki, these beings lived on a planet the Sumerians called Nibiru, what we call Planet X today, and the Sumerian accounts tell us that it orbits our Sun every 3,600 years, and flies through the core of our system, often causing great cataclysms on Earth. Sitchin's translations and theories are corroborated by an ancient wisdom text called the Kolbrin Bible. And according to Planet X historian Greg Jenner in his book Planet X and the Kolbrin Bible Connection, previous flybys of this mysterious object caused the sinking of Atlantis, the deluge, and the 10 plagues of Exodus. Although Sitchin was continuously mocked and attacked by fundamentalists, our government took his work seriously, and on January 25, 1983, NASA launched the Infrared Astronomical Satellite, IRAS. Its mission was to map the sky using infrared. According to NASA, IRAS was unable to complete its mission due to a failure in its supercooling system, and much of the data collected from the probe was classified and has never been disclosed. Several government whistleblowers say that this was a cover-up because NASA shut down IRAS after it imaged Planet X. Their accounts parallel an article published by the New York Times on January 30, 1983, shortly after the IRAS launch. Evidence assembled in recent years has led several groups of astronomers to renew the search for the 10th planet. Their accounts parallel an article published by the New York Times on January 30, 1983, shortly after the IRAS launch. Evidence assembled in recent years has led several groups of astronomers to renew the search for the 10th planet. They are devoting more time to visual observations with the 200-inch telescope at Mount Palomar in California. They are tracking 2 Pioneer spacecraft, now approaching the orbit of distant Pluto, to see if variations in their trajectories provide clues to the source of the mysterious force. And they are hoping that a satellite-borne telescope launched last week will detect heat signatures from the planet, or whatever it is out there. It is important to note that the term Planet X was also used to refer to a 10th planet. However, after Pluto was demoted to a dwarf planet in 2006, that definition became irrelevant. But what is relevant is what IRAS imaged and the consequences of those observations. In a Victoria Advocate article published on June 14, 1988, NASA astronomer Dr. John D. Anderson was quoted as saying that telemetry from the Pioneer 10 spacecraft indicated the existence of Planet X. Also note that this article was sourced from Google News and was featured in Yowza.com's March 2012 article titled "The Planet X Cover-Up in the Mainstream Media." Following publication of our article, the entire June 14, 1988 edition was deleted from the Google News site. However, a complete copy is available for Yowza.com subscribers. But what is relevant here is that Anderson is a NASA astronomer with one heck of a resume, and what he said in that 1988 news article was powerful. In that article, he said, "We have a 90 to 99% confidence that Uranus and Neptune are being disturbed, and by one candidate for that is a single Planet X." At that point, our government became more interested in keeping public attention focused much closer to home. After all, if you can't see it, it's not there. So go back to sleep, America. Nothing to see here. However, a few curious minds had other notions. On October 1988, Dr. Robert S. Harrington, the chief astronomer for the U.S. Naval Observatory, published his paper, "The Location of Planet X," in the Astronomical Journal. In an August 30th, 1990